At 95, Clint Eastwood isn't one to hold back. The man who's been the face of grit, intensity, and Hollywood legends for decades finally spoke the truth about Jack Palance. A confession that has left fans stunned. For years, rumors swirled, stories were whispered, and Hollywood insiders kept their lips sealed. But now, Eastwood has peeled back the curtain, revealing a side of Palance that no one truly expected. It all started with an intimate interview where Eastwood, in that unmistakable gravelly tone, paused, leaned back, and said something that made even longtime fans of classic cinema sit up. "People think they knew Jack," he admitted. "But the truth, well, it's something else entirely." Those words alone sparked a firestorm online, sending social media into overdrive. Clips of the interview spread like wildfire, comments flooded in, and fans debated every nuance of his revelation. What exactly did Eastwood mean? Palance, the towering figure known for his intense stares and commanding presence, had always been larger than life. He could dominate a scene without saying a word, and his reputation for toughness, both on-screen and off, was legendary. But Eastwood hinted at something deeper: a vulnerability, a method to his madness, and a side of Palance that was never captured in interviews or biographies. This wasn't the brash, unpredictable Hollywood actor people love to gossip about. This was a man with a hidden depth, and Eastwood had been there to witness it. The tension in Eastwood's words was palpable. He recounted stories from set, moments of unexpected kindness, and flashes of brilliance that only a handful of people ever got to see. Fans were riveted. Here was a man who had lived through decades of Hollywood's highs and lows, finally sharing a personal truth that cut through the myths and the media hype. It was as if decades of silence had built up pressure. And now, at 95, Eastwood was ready to let the world in on what really happened. Even more shocking were the hints of conflict. Eastwood didn't shy away from admitting that working with Palance could be challenging. "He had a fire," Eastwood said, "but it wasn't the kind you could see on set. It burned deeper." That cryptic line left audiences guessing. Was it admiration? Frustration? A mix of both? The tension between the two legends, Eastwood suggested, was complicated, layered, and nothing like the simple stories Hollywood had told. This confession isn't just a peek behind the curtain of old Hollywood. It's a reminder of the human stories behind the stars. Palance wasn't just a fierce presence on the screen. He was a man with secrets, contradictions, and moments that only those closest to him would ever understand. And Eastwood, in his final years, is finally telling us the truth. Jack Palance was a force of nature, a man whose mere presence could command a room, a set, or even a crowd of thousands. But behind the camera, the legend was far more complex than Hollywood tabloids ever let on. Clint Eastwood's recent revelations cast a new light on Palance's fierce reputation, showing that there was more to the man than the wild-eyed villain roles he often played. On set, Palance was notorious for his intensity. Co-stars whispered about his unpredictable energy, how one minute he could be warm and approachable, and the next, like a coiled spring, he could erupt with frustration. Eastwood described it as a mixture of brilliance and volatility, a cocktail that made every scene with him electrifying. "You never knew what you'd get," Eastwood admitted. Jack could be terrifying, but also astonishingly generous in ways people would never expect. Fans often remember Palance for his iconic performances, from Shane to his Academy Award-winning role in City Slickers. His wide-eyed stare, chiseled features, and booming voice made him perfect for villains or morally ambiguous characters. But Eastwood's memories hint at something entirely different. Behind the reputation for being difficult, Palance had a meticulous attention to detail and a profound respect for the craft. He demanded excellence not to intimidate, but because he believed deeply in the artistry of cinema. Stories from the set paint a vivid picture. Eastwood recalled one day when Palance insisted on shooting a scene multiple times, refusing to settle for anything less than perfection. While the crew grew frustrated, Eastwood observed something rare. Palance's patience wasn't born from ego. It came from a genuine desire to honor the story. This dedication, though wrapped in fire and fury, earned him a strange kind of admiration from his colleagues. Even those who clashed with him couldn't deny his talent. Yet, the legend of Palance's fierceness also had darker undertones. Eastwood hinted at moments of tension that were never publicly shared, heated arguments with directors, sudden walkouts, and on-set pranks that teetered on the edge of chaos. These stories added layers to the man Hollywood had simplified into a one-dimensional, tough guy. For Eastwood, these incidents were not just anecdotes. They were glimpses into a personality that was endlessly complex, a mix of intensity, artistry, and humanity. Palance's reputation also extended beyond the camera. Industry insiders recall that he had a unique way of holding people accountable, pushing them to be their best even when it made them uncomfortable. Eastwood's reflections reveal that beneath the towering, intimidating exterior, Palance had a code of honor, a loyalty to those who respected his craft. It's this duality, the fearsome yet principled presence, that made working with him both challenging and unforgettable. By revealing these behind-the-scenes truths, Eastwood allows fans to see Palance in a new light. He wasn't just the legendary antagonist on screen. He was a man with contradictions, a fire tempered by skill, and a presence that left an indelible mark on everyone he worked with. For Eastwood, recounting these memories is not about glorifying conflict. It's about honoring a man whose brilliance was inseparable from his intensity. Working with Jack Palance was not for the faint of heart. Clint Eastwood, who shared the screen with him on multiple occasions, revealed that the set could feel like a powder keg at any moment. Fans have always idolized Palance for his commanding performances, but behind the cameras, the tension was real, and sometimes it was almost unbearable. Eastwood recounted one particularly harrowing day on set. The scene was simple on paper, a quiet confrontation, but Palance approached it with an intensity that shook everyone around him. He didn't just act. He inhabited the character so completely that the air itself seemed to vibrate. Crew members reportedly held their breath during takes, unsure what would happen next. He could explode, but he could also transform the entire scene, Eastwood said. You felt like you were witnessing something historic every time. It wasn't just Palance's energy, it was the unpredictability. One minute, he would be laughing, joking with the crew. The next, he'd snap into character with a ferocity that startled even seasoned actors. Eastwood admitted that on some days, working with him felt like walking a tightrope. Every gesture, every line had to be precise because Palance didn't just perform, he demanded authenticity, and he expected it from everyone around him. Fans have heard tales of Hollywood legends clashing, but Eastwood's stories added a personal, human dimension. He described a moment when a director tried to rein in Palance, asking him to tone down his performance. Instead of rebellion, Palance calmly explained his vision, articulating a depth of thought that stunned everyone. It was a masterclass in control and intensity, showing that the man behind the intimidating presence had a mind as sharp as his stare. Yet Eastwood also acknowledged the fear. There were days when Palance's temper could flare unexpectedly, turning even mundane disagreements into tense standoffs. Crew members would scatter, cameras would pause, and the atmosphere would thrum with unease. Eastwood admitted that while it was challenging, it was also exhilarating. You couldn't fake anything around Jack, he said. He saw right through it. If you weren't committed, he'd make you feel it, and make sure everyone else did too. Despite the tension, Eastwood reflected on the unique bond they shared. The high stakes, the unpredictable energy, and the unspoken understanding of each other's craft created moments of magic. Some of the most iconic scenes in cinema, Eastwood revealed, were forged in these high-pressure moments, where fear and respect collided to produce something unforgettable. These behind-the-scenes stories reveal a side of Hollywood fans rarely see: the chaos, the intensity, and the pressure that shapes legends. Palance wasn't just an actor on a stage. He was a force that demanded attention, respect, and absolute dedication. And Eastwood, with his decades of experience, was one of the few who could navigate that fire and emerge with stories that illuminate the man behind the myth. Hollywood thrives on myth. Legends grow taller than life, and stories become larger than reality. Jack Palance was no exception. Over the decades, fans have heard countless tales about his on-set antics, his fierce temper, and his commanding presence. But Clint Eastwood's recent revelations at 95 challenge many of these myths, offering a glimpse into the reality behind the legend. One of the most pervasive myths was that Palance was impossible to work with. Tabloids painted him as a wild, unpredictable figure, someone who clashed with directors and terrified co-stars. While there was some truth to his intensity, Eastwood explains that the reality was far more nuanced. Palance's fire wasn't a product of ego. It was a tool, a way to push everyone around him to be better. People think he was just volatile, Eastwood said. But what they didn't see was how thoughtful he was, how deeply he cared about every take, every scene, every story. Eastwood also dismantled the idea that Palance was all menace and no charm. Fans rarely heard about the lighter, almost tender moments behind the scenes. Palance had a sly sense of humor, a quick wit, and a generosity that caught people off guard. Crew members who endured his tough exterior often discovered a man who could inspire loyalty and camaraderie. Jack had this way of surprising you, Eastwood remembered. Just when you thought you understood him, he'd do something that made you laugh, or even made you think differently about the whole scene. Then there were the stories of conflict that Hollywood exaggerated. Yes, Palance was demanding. Yes, he could be intense. But Eastwood clarified that many supposed explosions were blown out of proportion. Sometimes, a tense stare or a disagreement on artistic direction became tabloid fodder, but in reality, it was about dedication, precision, and the pursuit of excellence. Palance's approach wasn't designed to intimidate, it was designed to elevate. The myths also obscured the man's vulnerabilities. Eastwood's reflections reveal that Palance was not immune to fear, doubt, or insecurity, emotions every actor experiences. On quiet nights, away from the cameras and the applause, Palance would wrestle with the same questions any artist faces. Had he done enough? Was he telling the story justice? These human moments were invisible to the public, yet they shaped the intensity that everyone saw on screen. By separating myth from reality, Eastwood paints a portrait of Jack Palance that is more human, more compelling, and far richer than the caricatures of Hollywood gossip. He wasn't just a terrifying presence or a one-dimensional villain. He was a brilliant, complicated man whose legacy extends far beyond the screen. For fans, this insight is revelatory. It challenges long-held perceptions and invites us to reconsider what we think we know about one of cinema's most unforgettable figures. Hollywood thrives on legend, but sometimes the truth, especially when told by someone like Clint Eastwood, is even more powerful than the myths. Palance's story, as Eastwood tells it, is one of intensity, talent, vulnerability, and an enduring passion for the craft of acting. It's a story that finally honors the man behind the myth. At 95, Clint Eastwood isn't just looking back at Hollywood history. He's reflecting on a lifetime of experiences, lessons, and relationships. His revelations about Jack Palance are more than just stories. They're windows into the values, regrets, and truths that have shaped one of cinema's greatest icons. Eastwood spoke candidly about what he learned from working with Palance. Intensity alone isn't enough, he said. True greatness requires discipline, respect, and a deep understanding of the craft. Jack taught me that fire is only valuable if it's directed with purpose, he revealed. It can inspire brilliance or create chaos, depending on how you handle it. This reflection shows the reverence Eastwood holds for Palance, not just as a co-star, but as a teacher of sorts, someone whose presence forced him to elevate his own artistry. Regret, too, tinges some of Eastwood's memories. There were moments on set, he admitted, where misunderstandings or stubbornness may have caused unnecessary tension. Yet, these experiences, he insists, were essential. Looking back, I wouldn't change a thing, Eastwood said. Every clash, every high-pressure moment, it all taught me patience, perspective, and the value of collaboration. For fans, this honesty is striking. It's rare to see such self-reflection from a Hollywood legend, and it adds weight to everything he says about Palance. Eastwood also revealed new layers of admiration for his late co-star. Beyond the intensity, the unpredictable energy, and the legendary presence, Palance possessed a profound commitment to storytelling. He didn't just act, He embodied every character, every emotion, Eastwood said. You could feel it in every take. It was exhausting, but it was magic. That magic, Eastwood emphasizes, is what makes Palance unforgettable. Not just to audiences, but to the people who worked alongside him. But perhaps the most revealing part of Eastwood's reflections is how he connects Palance's legacy to the broader lessons of life and art. He talks about resilience, the courage to be yourself, and the importance of embracing both the challenges and joys of collaboration. In Palance, he saw a man unafraid to be vulnerable yet unyielding in his pursuit of excellence, a duality that defined his career and inspired those around him. For fans, these reflections are more than behind-the-scenes anecdotes. They're a call to reconsider what they thought they knew about Hollywood legends. Palance wasn't just a tough guy on screen. He was a mentor, a force of nature, and a reminder that brilliance often comes wrapped in complexity. And Eastwood, in his rare, candid moments, ensures that these truths are finally shared with the world. As the interview concludes, Eastwood's final words linger. Jack Palance was one of a kind. People will remember the legend, but I'll always remember the man. It's a poignant, emotional tribute. A closing revelation that reminds us that behind every Hollywood myth lies a human story, rich with lessons, contradictions, and moments that define a lifetime. For the first time, the truth about Jack Palance is not just whispered in corridors or hidden in stories. It's told by someone who lived it, someone who knows that the real story is always more powerful than the legend. In the end, Clint Eastwood's revelations remind us that legends are never just what we see on screen. Jack Palance wasn't simply a towering presence or a fierce villain. He was a man of complexity, intensity, and brilliance, whose true story has been hidden behind decades of Hollywood myth. Eastwood's reflections give us a rare, intimate glimpse into the human side of a legend. The moments of vulnerability, the fiery dedication, and the lessons that shaped an entire generation of actors. For fans, it's more than nostalgia. It's a reminder that behind every iconic performance lies a story of struggle, passion, and humanity. And while Hollywood will always remember Palance for his unforgettable roles, Eastwood ensures that the man behind the myth finally gets his due. As the curtain falls on these revelations, one thing is clear. The truth is often stranger and far more inspiring than the legend itself. Jack Palance lives on, not just in the films we love, but in the lessons he left behind and the memories of those who truly knew him.